Margie here. Did you know that trauma can be stored in your body, whether it's something that's from a long time ago or recent, and have negative effects on your bones and overall health? But the good news is there's a lot that can be done once it's recognized. So I'm really excited about this episode. We're going to talk about trauma and we're going to discuss how can you recognize if you have stored trauma and what can be done about it. Our special guest is Dr. Aimie Apigian, who's a trainer, speaker, physician. She's double board certified in preventive and addiction medicine with master's degrees in biochemistry and public health. And beyond her conventional medical and surgical training, she's also trained in psychosomatic medicine, functional medicine, and mental health nutrition. But she has extensive training in trauma, and she's done so much. She has a new book out about this, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And her work and what she teaches have really changed the lives of people in my family, our community, and me as well. So it's really powerful. And you can learn more about Dr. Aimie in the show notes, but make sure to listen to this episode because I think there's a lot to learn for everyone. So stay tuned. Welcome, Dr. Aimie. So happy to have you here on the podcast.
It is really good to see you again, Margie. It's been several years since I was last on this podcast, so it was very nice to see that we were going to be able to have a conversation again. And I really enjoy the work that you do, so I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's actually 4 years, and what was so amazing is that the tools that you've taught me and taught others, people have used, and it's really made a difference in their lives, and that's why I just am so excited to have you back and let people know about this work because it's not something that they'll go to the doctor and they'll say, "Oh, yes, somatic will be a big deal." Even though I think since we first met, I think it's really expanded, and I think more and more people are realizing the benefits. But I love the work you do, and I'm so excited because very soon your book will be out to the world, and that's just great that you were able to put this information in a book and really change more lives. So it's all so good.
Yeah, it's still a little incredulous for me that I wrote a book and that and that it's coming out. So this is the Biology of Trauma book, and to actually see and read it for myself after having spent so much time figuring out how do I put these concepts together? How do I explain this to other people? It is quite meaningful for me to have my book coming out into the world.
I just love it. You're right, though, because a lot of what you do is more experiential. So it's interesting that you're able to then put the concepts in a book. It is really quite a feat. So great for you. Yay. And good for the world. All right. So before we get started, I always like to know the backstory. Here you're a physician. You're doing all this amazing work in the world. What's your story? How did things change that you became involved with the work you're currently doing?
You like to know the backstory, Margie. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. I think that even I think of the people in your audience, and there's always a backstory as well. I could be wrong, but I think that many of your audience are women who are really nice, people who are just really nice. And actually, what we're finding is that the people who are really nice often have the most stored trauma in their body. And they've used people pleasing and being nice as a way to figure out how to be okay and how to function. So this is very much my backstory is I was taking on too much. And while it looked good on the surface, just like looking, being nice and people pleasing can look good on the surface, it was creating so much damage inside my body and I did not even know it. I had was in medical school, was also doing a master's in biochemistry at the time, and I decided to become a foster parent. Again, like just taking on responsibility, taking on more that I was sure that I could do and really didn't have that concept of am I neglecting myself in order to try to help other people? And at that time, the answer was definitely yes. And not only with becoming a foster parent, but even in my own medical studies, This was just how I lived life. And I can look back at my childhood and see that that's where it started. It started back in my childhood with my family of origin. Those were part of the family dynamics that I grew up in, where I was neglecting myself in order to try to help and take care of other people. And so fast forward now, I'm in my 20s, I'm becoming a foster parent. And because of the circumstances around Miguel, one of the children that they placed with me, he was going to go to a group home if it didn't work out with me. So even though I was single, even though I was in medical school, I decided to adopt. And it was an experience that broke me and really changed everything moving forward for my journey, not just my personal healing journey, but also my professional journey, my career. It was why I eventually left general surgery, where I started that residency, and switched to addiction medicine, also adding preventive medicine as board certification so I could really study and lean into this relationship between trauma and how the body holds on to trauma, the impact of trauma on one's physical health, because that's what happened to me. And that's what I was seeing in so many of my patients.
Yeah, wow, that's just so incredible, and it's not something that people realize. People think, "Okay, I have stress, and that's affecting my body," but I don't think they actually understand the difference between stress and trauma, and they're actually it's not exactly the same. So could you break that down for us a little bit?
Yes, and in my book, I shared the story of Kenneth. Kenneth was one of my patients at the VA hospital, so Veterans Affairs Hospital in Portland, Oregon, where I was in general surgery residency. And he came in after being in the gym and lifting weights, and his bicep was in the middle of his arm rather than being attached to the shoulder and to the elbow like it's supposed to. And he, of course, is freaking out. Oh my goodness, like what's going on with my muscle? It's in the middle of my arm. He was in a lot of pain. And for me, this is a great example of the difference between stress and trauma. And when we understand that difference for our body, not just our muscles, but our body, it helps us navigate life differently. So for Kenneth, he went to the gym and he was lifting weights. He was exercising. Exercise is a physical stress. Stress is really good. In fact, stress is really good for the bones. Bones grow with stress. That's how we grew our bones when we were children. The stress of the physical activity and jumping and running, that was stress for our bones. And it was actually how our bones grew. Same thing with our muscles. When we stress out our muscles, we grow our muscles. That's why we exercise. If we didn't grow our muscles when we exercise, we wouldn't exercise at all. So there's this idea that stress grows us. Stress is what allows us to do more. Stress is what takes us to the next level in our life. So then, if stress is not the bad thing that we've labeled it, where does trauma come in? Well, for Kenneth, what happened was that he lifted too much weight. The amount of weight that he lifted that morning was not the amount that would grow his muscles. Stress your muscles and then rest your muscles. Stress and rest is the rhythm that our body uses to grow our capacity. But what Kenneth had done that morning, he had taken on a weight that he thought he could handle, but his body said, that is too much for us. That is beyond our capacity this morning. And rather than growing his muscle, it broke his muscle. And his muscle is now in the middle of his arm. Now, I'll share more of what that means in terms of what does a person need to know once they identify, oh, I've had trauma and it hasn't just been stress. But I want to just pause there for people because even this is such a new concept for people, especially the older that you get, and you can look back in your life and be like, oh, that was such a stressful time. Oh, that was such a stressful divorce, that was such a stressful car accident, that was a stressful family dynamic, not realizing that you're looking back at your life through your current perspective. You now know that you were okay. You now know that you survived that car accident, that you survived that divorce, that you survived whatever it was that you went through. But at the time, did you know that? You didn't know that at that time. You didn't know if you were going to be okay. And that was part of the fear that you were experiencing at that time. Whether maybe it was a divorce, and let's just use that as an example because it's an example that can be applied to anything else, whether it's a death in your family, a death of your pet, whatever it is, there's this something happens, and the emotions that you experience are ones that feel so awful, so big, you don't know if you're going to survive this. And oftentimes, what I see, and certainly what I did, was try to find ways to be okay. Emotional eating is one of those. Overworking can be another one. Over exercising can be one. Focusing on the next course or learning or staying in our head, just trying to learn all information is a way to avoid our feelings that are happening in our body. So there's all kinds of ways in which then it shows up that that actually was more overwhelming for us than what we had thought, more overwhelming for us than what we've wanted to admit. But the body doesn't lie. And those experiences create damage inside of our body, inside of our cells, inside our mitochondria, our DNA. And that's not something that you're going to recognize because you can't see it. And so our mind can think like, well, we're doing okay. We're functioning. We can just, you know, binge eat again on ice cream and brownies tonight and, drown ourselves in social media, scrolling mindlessly through my phone and movies in order to avoid actually feeling this pain that this situation is causing. But we don't see the damage that's happening underneath the surface. And then what happens later on is people develop poor bone health, poor metabolism, poor digestive system. Their sleep is off. They've got more background anxiety or depression, and they haven't connected the dots that this is actually how stored trauma manifests itself in the body.
Hey, Margie here. As a physical therapist, I know firsthand how important exercise is for our bones, overall health, and happiness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion on what exercises are safe and effective for people with osteoporosis. That's why I created this handout that contains a 30-minute video where I explain the concepts so you understand the do's and don'ts when it comes to exercise. And this is important because this way you can go into any class and know what you should be doing and what you should avoid. Because too many people are doing exercises that actually increase their risk of spinal fractures. I also included videos of me demonstrating effective balance, posture, and weight-bearing exercises you can put into your day right away. So all you need to do to access this handout, it's free, is go to tinyurl.com/osteoporosis exercises. So it's tinyurl.com, again, /osteoporosis exercises, or you can click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. Wow. I love this because it's not something, what I have seen is that it's not something people appreciate or even recognize, like you said. But then once they do, and when they address it, real change can happen, real physiologic changes. And it's just really powerful. But I know you talk about 5 steps to the body's trauma response. So can you just sort of share what goes on during the steps, and then we'll go through other things that people can do? Because I just think, that's why I'm so happy that you're here, because oftentimes we go through our life, we don't realize we have this stored trauma, but yet it's a catalyst for so many negative things going on in our body.
Absolutely true. And, using Kenneth as this example of some days we can handle a lot and some days it's too much. And some days it grows us, and some days it breaks us. And what is it that will happen inside of us when something breaks us? There are 5 specific steps. And this is what happens inside of us. One of my favorite quotes from Gabor Mate is, trauma is not what happened to us, it's what happened inside of us in response to what happened to us. And so this would be an aspect of the body and its experience of trauma that I would want people to really understand, is that let's not continue to look at what happened to us. Let's not look for the big bad events or even the little t traumas. We're looking at the wrong thing. What we want to be looking at is, what was my inner experience? What were these 5 steps? Do I see evidence that my body went through these 5 steps? So the 5 steps starts with the startle. The startle is the moment when we first realize that something might be wrong. For many, this is some moment of intuition, some gut intuition that tells you something's off here. But we don't know for sure yet. And so that's why we call it just the startle. It's just that moment where we've picked up on something. Something doesn't look right. Something doesn't sound right. Maybe it's a smell. Something doesn't smell right. That we pick up information through our senses and something doesn't seem right. Maybe we're getting a phone call. Maybe this phone call will put our body into a trauma response. Why is this person calling me at this time of the day? Something's not right. It's that first initial something's off. And when that happens, our body has already started to release hormones in order to help us respond. The first hormone that it releases is noradrenaline. It's like a sister to adrenaline, but it's actually already made in our tissues so that as soon as our nervous system gives it the signal, it's releasing, and it doesn't have to be made like adrenaline has to be made, which is why there's a slight delay with adrenaline, because our adrenal glands actually have to make the adrenaline. So noradrenaline gets released, and that's what causes us to startle. Some of us may actually startle. We may jump if it's especially a loud sound, right? We may jump. We may actually have that startle. But even if we don't physically see ourselves startle, there's still that internal increase in hypervigilance, increase in energy, increase in attention, because something's not right. And our body is starting to prepare us to take action. And so, for example, a phone call, right? That someone gets on the phone and they say, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this. And immediately our body goes into it's confirmed. There is something wrong. And that's when the adrenaline is going to kick in. So adrenaline kicks in about 15 seconds. So when something startles us, if you don't want to go into a full-blown stress response, you need to help your body return to a sense of safety within 15 seconds, or else your body will be like, nope, it's a true danger, and here we go. So now adrenaline is on board. The cortisol is not even anywhere around yet. Cortisol doesn't come on until 15 minutes. It really peaks at 20 minutes. So our stress hormone is adrenaline, and that is what moves us to action. Adrenaline is released, and it's sending all of this energy, well, I should say the message to make energy to all of our cells. And everything changes inside of our body from the blood flow. It moves our blood flow away from our gut. It's not where we need our blood right now. And it moves it to our muscles. It moves it to our brain because we need to think. We need to act. So it moves our muscles, the blood to those muscles. It moves the energy. So it activates all of our energy production. Happens in mitochondria, but yet we also need glucose released from our liver. So it is a whole body response of what happens in a stress. Now, if we're going to talk about Kenneth, that's great as long as it's something that we can respond to. As long as he could have lifted that weight, the adrenaline would have helped him. The adrenaline would have led to a stress that would grow his muscles. But for him, it became too much. It became too much for his capacity. Well, what if the danger that we're perceiving feels too much for us? Maybe the phone call is, your daughter just had a car accident. Maybe the phone call is your mother's just passed away. Whatever it is, in that moment, it feels too much for us. And when it feels too much, our body says, I don't think I can overcome this. And if I can't overcome it, why should I even try? And our body changes survival strategies. It goes from high energy, mobilization, let's tackle this problem, let's overcome this challenge, let's fight back, to there's nothing I can do that will make a difference. And our body switches into a low energy state called the shutdown step in my book, a low energy state. And this is where we feel all of a sudden heavy. That clear thinking of what should I do next now becomes foggy thinking. We can't even think. Maybe we're even searching for words. We can't even find the words. If you're watching a movie, this is the point where people are asking them questions and they can't even answer. They're stumbling over. I don't even know my own name right now. So that's the trauma response. And it's when inside of us, our own body, our own cells, our own metabolism says that this danger that we are seeing feels too big for what we can fight back right now. We may not survive this. Let me hibernate. Let me shut down. Let me disconnect. And that will be how I can best survive this situation.
So are those all the steps, Dr. Amy?
So the steps are the startle, the stress, and then we reach that point where it's the wall where there's nothing that you can do that will make a difference. At that moment, our body freezes, realizing I'm trapped. I'm powerless. I'm alone in this. And that's when it moves into the shutdown. So startle, stress, the wall, freeze, and shutdown are the 5 steps of what happens inside of our body when it experiences a trauma response and not just a stress response.
Wow, that's a great way of breaking it down. So someone's sitting here listening and they're like, yeah, I've had stress in my life, but how do they know? They're high functioning, they're living their life. How can they really recognize if indeed they do have stored trauma? Are there certain cues or there certain ways that they can, yes, this is stored trauma or you have this?
Yeah, there are ways, and this is what I would want people to look for actually. So rather than looking at past events and what happened to us, because what happened can either cause a stress response or it can cause a trauma response. We don't know. So the way that we know is we look at, well, what's happening in your life today? And so when people come into my courses, that's what I'm asking them. That's what I'm having them assess. Let's look at these 3 levels and what's happening in your life today, because that's how we know if your body is still holding on to this trauma and it wasn't just an event of your past. So the 3 levels that trauma impacts, or the 3 levels at which really patterns will show up. And now is an important word, is patterns. The nervous system runs on patterns. It runs on responses so that when something happens, you know how to respond. When you are driving home from work, you can drive home without even thinking about, do I turn here or is it the next street? Like your nervous system has learned that and has made it habitual. So there's this element of we have these habitual responses to different circumstances. And that's what we're going to look at. When you have conflict, when you and another person don't agree on something, how do you respond? That is a big way to look at, is your body holding trauma? Is your nervous system still operating on trauma survival patterns as opposed to operating now on a system that says, oh, life is good. The world is safe. I am safe. I am enough. Or are we noticing, I think that based on my responses, it seems like my nervous system is operating through a perspective that says the world is not safe. The world is dangerous, in fact. People might hurt me. I should keep my walls up. I'm not enough. I need to do more. I need to be different. It's not safe to be my authentic self because people actually wouldn't like the real me. I've got to hide different aspects of myself. These are the ways in which we can recognize that our body is still operating with these survival strategies as opposed to the healing strategies that it normally would have, where the healing strategies are one of openness and connection and creativity. And that's our default. So just looking at our default thoughts, well, oftentimes I'll ask the people coming through my courses, what's the first thought that you have in the morning? Many times, if they're just coming in to start this work, they're telling me that their first thought of the morning is, ah, I don't want it to be morning. I don't like my life. Do I have to get up? That is a trauma state. That's not a stress state. A stress state would say, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on. I need to get up. I need to take charge of the day. I need to, like navigate my life. There's energy behind it. If there's heaviness, that's the stored trauma in your body speaking. Ugh, just that, right? Like just, that's heaviness. I don't want to get up. I know I have to, but I don't want to. And so what often they tell me that they do is they reach for coffee. Why? Because coffee will give them that adrenaline that helps pull them out of that heaviness and helps them have stress to be able to get things done. But this is a common feature of people who have stored trauma is that then they end up pushing themselves through their day rather than feeling like they're just fueled by joy. They're fueled by connection. They're fueled by happiness. A person who has stored trauma, their tank is empty. They're not fueled by joy. They are driven by fear. They're pushing themselves through, finding ways, whether that's food, exercise, stress, drama, coffee. There's all kinds of things that we can actually use that their true purpose is to help us push through our day, just get through to get things done. And that's coming at a high cost because we're neglecting the underlying biology of trauma that does exist and will catch up with us. For me, it caught up in my early 30s. For other people, like I share the story of Elena, a patient that I saw, that's how I start chapter 1. Her biology of trauma caught up with her in her late 40s after a car accident, and she developed autoimmunity. So there's these elements of just because we don't feel it, just because we can't ignore it, just because we can push through, doesn't mean that there isn't this underlying biology of trauma that is accumulating over time and will eventually surface. And my goal is to be able to help people see that, oh, I have this stored trauma. Let me do something about it now before it becomes a diagnosis that then I have to add that to my plate of responsibilities that will only overwhelm me more.
Wow. So what state is what states do you like to see? Like, what is the best state that you can wake up in the morning? How would you describe that state where people are
Yeah. Let's talk about that state, right, Margie? You talk about happiness a lot. Let's talk about that state.
Yeah.
So there are 3 states. There are 3 states that a person is in any given moment of their day. There's only 3 states of our nervous system. So I like to describe them as just like your inner state. Many people will recognize it as my inner emotional state, but it's so much more than just emotions. It's your biology. Like this is your physiological state, which means that whatever state you're in, will be expressed in your emotions and your thoughts, but also in your biology at the system and cellular level. So this is where it will be important for bone health because you will not be able to grow healthy bones if you're in the trauma state or if you're constantly in the stress state. You've got to be in this other state, which is there's a couple of different names for it. I call it calm but alive. There's parasympathetic, ventral vagal, rest and digest. Those are other names that have been used to describe this inner state where we feel calm, but very alive. We don't have a background anxiety, fear, insecurity of, am I going to be okay? Am I enough? Do they really like me? In fact, we feel calm, peace, confident. And with that comes an openness. That, again, we will normally be able to recognize that by our emotions. Oh, yes, I feel connected. I feel connected with you right now, Margie. I feel connected. I feel creative. I feel like I'm alive. I feel like I'm alive. But it's also going to show up in our thoughts. So, what would a person's first thought of the morning be if this is the state that they are waking up in? "Ah, it's good to be alive. I'm so glad it's morning. I'm so glad I have another day. It's good to be alive." That is not the thought that you will have if you're waking up in stress mode. And that is not the thought that you will have if you are waking up in that trauma inner state. But in this state, that's how you would recognize it. Good to be alive. So, again, what I tell people is that I'm not looking for you to change your thoughts. We've gotten the message for so long that it's all about mindset. You just need to change your thought. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, how would you know if you have stored trauma? What is your first thought before you have the opportunity to change your thought? I'm looking for your default, because that's what gives us a window into your nervous system. If you have consciously changed your thought, that's no longer a window into your inner state. That's a window into your brain and what you think that you need to do. So I'm looking for, what is the first thought? What's your default response? What's your default reaction? That's what gives us a window into your nervous system, not what you consciously try to think or do, because that's a very different window into some of your constructs around what you believe about yourself and what you believe you need to do. But it's not the window into the nervous system where trauma really is held.
Wow. I think there's what's a little sad is that a lot of people don't wake up that way, and they just think that's the way life is. I'm just getting by. And but the beautiful part about it is it doesn't have to be, and you're never too old. That's what I think is so incredible about your work. Regardless of what you've done your whole life, there's still an opportunity to work on this stored trauma in a way people would just never believe. That's what I think about your work. It's very, very different. And that's what I've seen when people have done so many different things, and they've done talk therapy and, you know, good programs, but when they haven't addressed it from a somatic, lens, the way that you teach it, and is there any possibility? Well, let's talk about your book first, because I want people to know how. So, in terms of how do you teach people what to do in your book and how they can maybe, I mean, how nice if you're not in that state to just think about that, waking up and like, wow, it's a great day. I'm happy to be alive. I love that. I love that energy. And so when someone, in your book, well, how do you share all the different tools that they can use to do that?
Yes, and this was a challenge, honestly, and I rewrote this entire book several times to get it just right. And what I have done is broken the book into 3 sections. For the first section, I need to help people understand what's happening inside their body during stress and trauma. So that's the first section of my book, is walking them through these 5 steps, giving so much detail that it's very clear for them how to recognize, was this a trauma? Was this a stress? And then anything new in their life. Right now in their life, are they going through something stressful? Or are they going through something that is a trauma for their body? And then in section 2, I say, all right, so if that happened to us, why is the body still holding on? Why can't we actually move on like we all want to be able to do? Why are we still responding, reacting, living our life as if the danger is still here? I explain why and how in section 2, talking about the body trauma loop. And really, it's the formation of a biology of trauma, which ends up being what keeps us stuck. Our own biology keeps us stuck in our trauma states and patterns. So then in section 3, I'm like, all right, here's what we do about it. If now that we know how our body experiences trauma, we know why and how it holds on, here's what to do about it. And this is the exciting thing, Margie, is it's true. No matter how old you are, no matter what you've been through, there is always a repair tool that your body is waiting for you to be able to use to give it what it needs. The body can heal when it has what it needs. This is lesson number 1 that I learned in surgery, is that my patients would heal from surgery. My patients would heal from the incisions that I made on their body after a surgery. I didn't have to send them to therapy to talk about healing that skin incision. It just, when we gave the body what it needed, it did the healing. And the same is true when we experience even the hardest of emotional or psychological experiences. The body is designed to heal. It just hasn't had what it needs. So section 3 is all about, what does the body actually need? It needs things in a certain sequence, in a certain order. I see people getting the order all wrong. They're trying to do these deep dives into their past and their childhood and into stories before they've set the foundation of regulation, before they've created the inner safety. So there is a specific sequence in which we need to provide the body these different elements. And when we provide that sequence, when we provide the repair tools, I use the word magic, Margie, just because it is so wonderful and amazing. And you stand back and you're like, wow, isn't the body amazing? Because it's like magic happens when we do the right things in the right order. The body, it's like it can reverse and undo and heal so much in a relatively short amount of time. Things that have taken us decades to accumulate. For some of us, for some of your people, Margie, traumas happened decades ago, and their body's been holding it since then. And yet here we come along, maybe even let's just say as an example, my 21-day journey, my 3 weeks, my 6-week program, and we're seeing so much dramatic change in the body and their physical health, that the body is able to undo and reverse and heal so much in a short amount of time compared to the decades of time that it took us to get here. It's quite incredible and very encouraging. And I'm going to use the word hope. It gives me a lot of hope, which is why I do what I do. And I wrote the book that I wrote, because it's my way of sharing hope. For me, the biology of trauma message is a message of hope.
Oh, Dr. Aimie, this is so good and so true. I've seen this. I mean, as a physical therapist, I would see people, they just did not heal. Chronic pain did not go away because they had this stored trauma. And so when this was able to be released, all of a sudden there's a new lease on life. And I see this now because I've seen numerous people doing your work, and it's real, and you've come to my community, you've done certain things, and it's just really, and family members too who've been doing, have been learned from your teaching. So it's really amazing. So just tell people how they, because I know you're doing something special with gifts from with the book.
I am. So, yes, the book is coming out in just a few days. It's still a pinch me moment that that's happening. And they can buy it on Amazon, and they can then come and get some bonuses and some resources on my website, which is biologyoftrauma.com. And there they will see the book and be able to get resources and bonuses that I've put together, including my 5-day nervous system somatic reset. So, if you're curious about these somatic exercises that Margie keeps referencing, I've put together 5 powerful somatic exercises that you can get started with today for creating that inner safety that we need for our bodies to heal.
Ah, I can't wait, and I can't wait to hear when people try this, what changes in their life? Well, we have a couple of minutes, Dr. Amy. Do you think you could go through one? There are numerous exercises that I've actually taught people that you've taught me, pushing the rock. I mean, there's a couple ones that I love. But is there anything quickly that you could give them a little sense of something that you do that's a little different than everybody else?
I would love to, and in fact, then I'll involve you in the process.
Yes.
Uh, just doing a quick, like, body scan yourself, where do you notice any tension or any discomfort at any time, any place, any for any reason right now?
I would say I did a very, very serious, heavy workout this morning. So not a lot of tension, but a little bit, I would say, in my, I would say my left knee, just a very little bit.
Left knee. Okay. Okay. And give me a number. I don't care if you rate it like 1 to 10, 1 to 5. That doesn't matter because this is your rating. So you give me a number for that level of discomfort.
Or maybe a 3.
A 3. Okay. Do you have anything like a pillow or blanket or purse or book or anything near you that you can grab?
Let's see. How big does it have to be?
Does not matter. It does not matter. I'll
Book?
let
Is
you.
a book too much or it has to be soft?
No, that's fine. Yeah, let's do a book. Is
Okay.
that James Nestor's book on breath?
Breath, good book, right?
Uh, Love that book.
Good
All
book.
right, so you're gonna hold it over your stomach, and that's it. Like, we're just gonna hold it over your stomach. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's a book. It feels hard, and life is not perfect. So sometimes we just got to use what we have. Now, I want you to move the book a little to your left. Notice how that feels. Now move it over to your right a little bit. Notice how that feels. And which one do you like better? Middle, left, or right?
I would say actually left.
Left. Okay. And again, we don't need to analyze. We don't need to understand why. We just get to be like, okay, I see that that feels more helpful to my body right now. So we're just going to go with it. Now move the book a little down. Notice how that feels. Now move it up further from what you had it before. Notice how that feels. And now move it back to the middle. And again, same question. Just where do you seem to like it best? Where feels best?
Down was better.
Down. Okay, so we're going to be a little down and left on your belly. And if anyone else is following along, you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to hold something over your belly and move it around, giving several seconds at each place just to see, do I like this better? Do I like that better? And we don't need to understand why at this time. We just are seeing what our body likes best. So now that we've found that spot, Margie, I want you to put your attention on your knee and give me the number right now for your knee.
Right now, I feel nothing in my knee. So right
Nothing.
yeah, actually 0. I don't feel
0.
seriously, I don't feel a thing.
We went from 3 to 0 in less than 60 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the power of the somatic work.
Yeah, we'll have to discuss how this happened because that's sort of wow, that's really, really interesting. Any
Isn't that interesting?
yeah, it's
Even
sort
with
of
a book, even with something hard that we're like, we don't even know if this is going to work. Look at
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's sort of but I have no idea how that worked, quite honestly. I understood the pushing, the rock one with the
Uh-huh.
pushing, I got
Uh-huh.
that one, but this one, that's is it just focusing? Well, it's probably too long to explain.
The short story is that our abdomen, our belly feels very vulnerable because it is very vulnerable. Everywhere else in our body that is important for our survival is protected by bones, but not our belly. And we have some really important things there. And if we really got hurt, we could die. And so our belly is a place in our anatomy that naturally feels more vulnerable, which is why when we get overwhelmed, we want to just curl up and cover our belly because it's what our body wants when we feel vulnerable. We want to cover up our belly. So this is our way of saying, I got you. What if I protect you? and then you don't have to protect yourself.
Wow, so something if you did a lot of strict weight training and it's a little sore and you just focus somewhere else, it's like, "Okay, I can
Yeah,
relax." Very
yeah,
so
yeah.
people can do that exact thing that you just
Yeah,
mentioned? Yeah.
yeah, it's actually one of I go into a lot more detail in my somatic reset. So for those people who want to purchase the book and get that 5-day nervous system reset, I go into a lot more detail and include the science of this specific exercise because it is one of my go-to quick, I need something right now because I'm starting to feel overwhelmed now. But even just other aches and pains, it's just a way for the body to shift into that place of I feel calm, I feel alive, life is good. It's good to be alive.
Wow, that was great, Dr. Amy. And so tell people also about your website and if they're practitioners, you have a practitioner program. You want to just share some of the other things so people where people can go to learn more about your amazing work?
Yeah, in fact, you know about this. You know about the fact that I've got a directory of biology of trauma
Yeah, I do
professionals.
because there are people who have gone there and have been working with your practitioners and have really changed their life. So I know that's very well. Yeah.
Yes, and I am so proud of that. Like, I am so proud of these practitioners around the world who have been studying and training with me, and now they people can find them on my website, on the directory. So they would go to biologyoftrauma.com, look under the directory, and they can find one of the practitioners to work with. Or if they are a practitioner, they can become a biology of trauma professional and study with me, come to the program. It all starts with the foundational journey where I teach them these somatic exercises because I want them to be able to not only know these for themselves, but also teach those that they're helping. This is such powerful work. So we start here because it obviously affects our biology as well. But for those self help individuals, that's also where we're starting. So I allow them to take these courses, and we would start with the foundational journey. So they are also learning this aspect of how to actually create that inner safety that is the first step for the healing process.
Wow, well, this has been so incredible. I'm so excited about your book. I already have it pre-ordered, so
Oh,
can't
thank
wait
you.
can't wait to see how you've taken all because I know about your work for a long time, but how you've taken this and put it just so I'm just so happy that you've done this because I know so many people will be helped. And thank you for being here and sharing this with all of us and look forward to staying in touch. And it's sort of like your baby, right? You're putting it out to the world. So I know great things will happen. So thanks again.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you for the work that you do.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Amy as much as I have, and now a better understanding of trauma and how it can be stored in your body, causing negative effects for your bones and overall health. The good news is there's so much that can be done, and I'm really excited because Dr. Amy put this together in her new book. And once you purchase the book, she has these great gifts to get you started so that you're able to do things to release some of this stored trauma. So, all the links to that will be in the show notes, as well as the link to register for the class that she'll be doing with the community. So, check out the show notes for more information. And thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.